Greetings, Internet faithful. I'm some guy named Rob from On Your Marks Wrestling, and this is Rob Recaps, the greatest Royal Rumble from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that was on the WWE Network yesterday, that is to say Friday, April 27th, 2018. As always, I'm going to start with the TLDR, and the show itself was quite, it was competent, it was well-produced, the set looked gorgeous, the camera work and the production value was top-notch. In fact, I would say that this was probably one of their better efforts in terms of production and their camera angles and placement. They did a good job of cutting inappropriate spots, which is something that they've had a hard time with in recent shows that I've noticed. The problem is, with all of the matches that they had and all the titles on the line, there were no actual title changes whatsoever. There was one vacant title that was awarded, but other than that, this felt like a really big, expensive house show. Now, there were a couple things that may have been set up for future feuds, but other than that, I don't really see a whole lot that came out of this other than putting on a grand spectacle. So while yes, a lot of the jokes during the last couple of weeks have been how much this is going to be the world's most expensive house show, the results kind of pan that out. But anyway, I didn't hate the show. I didn't love the show. I thought it was probably, in terms of pay-per-views, one of the better ones that I've seen recently. But overall, in the canon of WWE pay-per-views and what they've been able to do, this was kind of like more like the world's okayest Royal Rumble. Anyway, let's get into a little bit of a deeper dive and take a look at the show. We kick things off with Triple H versus John Cena. Interestingly enough, on pay-per-view, these guys have only faced twice before, once at WrestleMania 22 and once again at Night of Champions. I believe they had one win each over each other on major event shows such as this. So this was a bit of an odd tiebreaker show, considering they waited, 12, 13 years for them to kind of settle the score on this, to see who comes out on top. Now, one of the things I really enjoyed about this match was actually the opening of the match, with the two of them locking up with sort of the test of strength and kind of the back and forth jockeying for position. This match had a very old school feel, and when I say old school, I'm not talking about, Ruthless Aggression era or Attitude era. I'm talking like classic era, NWA era. This was actually quite well done in terms of matches. It got across what it needed to get across. I kind of liked how John Cena got a little bit edgier and a lot less goofy throughout this match. It was quite a refreshing change of pace, considering all the incessant mugging he was doing for the camera leading into WrestleMania 34. Bit of a rare botched spot between the two when John Cena comes off the top rope for what was supposed to be a drop kick, but Triple H counters into a sort of non-power bomb that the announcers try to sell off as a spine buster, but was neither. It was basically John Cena missed his drop kick, and Triple H just sort of lightly tapped on John Cena's legs to kind of guide him down. It looked very awkward, and I don't know why they had to replay it in slow motion to kind of show off how awkward and bad it looked. Finish comes as predicted. Cena kind of hits an AA, and then slingshots Triple H into the corner, hits another AA for good measure, picks up the 3 count, and we kick off the match with a John Cena, we kick off the show rather with a John Cena victory. He addresses the crowd, tells them what an honor and a privilege it is to wrestle for them, and the crowd starts off with a feel-good moment for the night. We follow this up with Cedric Alexander defending his Cruiserweight Championship versus Kalisto in what I think was the most conflicted match of the night. The match started off really hot with a lot of raw athleticism, a lot of flipping and jumping and counters, and the crowd was really into it and really eating it up, and then it turned into a rest hold fest, which was really strange for a cruiserweight match. I would have preferred shortening the match a little bit more, using less rest holds and maybe a couple more high-octane moves, and keeping the crowd hot, because the crowd was really into this. In fact, I think the crowd was giving them more than what they were getting stateside when they were on 205 Live. Now, of course, part of that could be because 205 Live, I believe they're following SmackDown, so they have to kind of follow the SmackDown main event, and the crowd is a little bit burned from it. They're kind of gassed out. Whereas this crowd, yeah, they had popped really hard for John Cena versus Triple H, but the crowd was still relatively fresh, still very energetic. They had a lot of enthusiasm, especially for the opening. So for them to go into that really high octane transitional type of opening into a lot of rest holds only to kind of ramp it up at the end felt a little bit disappointing. I have to say, I love some of the moves. Cedric Alexander's dropkick on Kalisto that snapped his head back looked absolutely deadly. That was absolutely brutal looking, and the replay, this is one of those where I wish they would have replayed it a couple more times. Kalisto tries for a Salida del Sol to end the match, but Cedric Alexander counters into the lumbar check for the win, and this will become a running theme for the night. Cedric Alexander retains his Cruiserweight Championship. The next match of the night, which would of course be the only match on the card with actual title implications, is the vacant Raw Tag Team Championships were up for grabs as Woken, Matt Hardy, and Bray Wyatt battled the Bar for the vacant titles. Now, of course, because the Woken, or Team Woken, Woken Warriors, I've heard Woken Lovers, Deleters of Worlds, whatever it is that you want to call them, this match was pretty much preordained from the beginning. You knew who was going to win because both Sheamus and Cesaro were moved over as the Bar to SmackDown, and you can't have the Raw Tag Team Champions on SmackDown. So, yeah, this match was very, I mean, you already knew what was going to happen going in, unless they were going to throw an absolute major curveball, which I doubt they would do. You knew what was going to happen. It was just going to be a question of how it would end. The match itself was nothing spectacular. Although the crowd did like the wonderful segment, where they clapped along. They gave a very enthusiastic applause to both Welcome Back Hardy and to Bray Wyatt. But overall, this match was a little bit of a letdown. And of course, as predicted, the Woken Warriors walk away as Raw Tag Team Champions. Next up is the rematch from last week's or 2 weeks ago on Monday Night Raw, where Jinder Mahal lost his title to Matt Hardy. We have the rematch with Matt Hardy defending his United States Championship against Jinder Mahal, and a lot of attention was focused on the fact that Jeff Hardy had a bad leg, that he was attacked on SmackDown this past week, but that never really came into play. There wasn't a whole lot of work done on the leg. There wasn't a whole lot of reason for Hardy to have to sell that injury, other than the fact that they mentioned it a lot because Jeff wasn't moving anywhere near as fast as he usually does in the ring. About midway through the match, we get a really, really bad botch where Jeff Hardy goes up for a Whisper in the Wind. He completely whiffs on the maneuver, but about 2 seconds later, Jinder Mahal decides to sell the miss anyway, and basically just falls to the canvas for no particular reason, which was very odd and very comical, and I think the announce team tried to make a save on this, but couldn't. It was just very, very awkward, and yeah, it was probably the highlight of the match in a match that wasn't especially great. I mean, Jeff Hardy managed to make a salvageable match out of this with Jinder Mahal. Jinder actually started off really well. He was really aggressive, but as the match went on, and then especially after that botch, I think that botch threw him off his game, and then from there on, it was just sort of downhill. Either way, again, house show rules, the titles don't change hands. So we have Jeff Hardy picking up the win after a twist of fate, which looked more like a stunner, because Jinder Mahal sold it wrong, and then we get the Swanton Bomb 3 count, and Jeff Hardy is still your United States Heavyweight Champion. The SmackDown Tag Team Championship is up for grabs next as champions the Bludgeon Brothers defend against former champions the Usos. This is sort of the rematch from WrestleMania 34. Now, if we take a look at this on paper, we look at the history and we say, okay, the only time really that the Usos or anyone has looked good, but especially the Usos have looked good against the Bludgeon Brothers, was when there was some form of distraction from Naomi. Naomi saved them from a beatdown a couple weeks ago. This past week on SmackDown, she came out and started dancing during the middle of a match, a singles match between Rowan and Jimmy Uso. And, well, let's see, we're in Saudi Arabia, and women are not allowed to participate in combat sports there, from what I understand. And there were absolutely no women on the card. There were no women announcers, and there were no women interviewers. So we're not going to see Naomi. So the match results were as predicted. The Usos, it was kind of an extended squash. It wasn't exceptionally competitive. Bludgeon Brothers walk away, and still the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. It's going to be interesting to see where they go from here, what team they're going to put up against them to kind of make them look a little bit mortal, or at least give the possibility that these guys may drop the belts at some time in the future. Next up was the Fatal 4-Way Ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship, featuring what should have been Just okay. I'm going to start off by saying the TLDR on this ladder match is that it was quite disappointing considering how good it could have been with the participants involved. You had Samoa Joe, you had Finn Balor, you had Seth Rollins, you had The Miz. All of these guys are competent workers. They range anywhere from above average to great. Actually, calling them competent is almost an insult. And, you have lots of athleticism here. You have lots of guys that can move. You got lots of guys who have actually been in ladder matches before, as well as four guys who have worked at or near the main event for quite some time in their recent career. So this is the type of thing where I was a little bit disappointed with how this match really kind of went. I guess I was spoiled by that 5-star ladder match for the North American Championship at NXT TakeOver New Orleans just a few weeks ago, because this match was a few noticeable notches, or let's say it was a few rungs lower in terms of quality. The ending especially came completely out of nowhere. It started off kind of slow and then got into some really good spots. And then I was expecting it to get into some more elevated spots where you have like 2 or more ladders in play, multiple people going up at the same time, maybe 3 or all 4 guys going for the belt all at the same time, with the spill spots to the outside. The pay-per-view ladder match spots that you would expect. The problem is that because you've got Monday Night Raw coming up, and then you've got your house shows and SmackDown, and then next Sunday you have Backlash. Well, you can't really do as much, and this is what, again, gave it a bit of a house show feel. The match didn't feel like it was a pay-per-view ladder match, it felt like it was a ladder match meant for a house show. Now, I'm going to guess that they were trying to repeat the magic of Seth Rollins' heist of the century that he pulled at WrestleMania 31 when he stepped in and basically swooped up the WWE Championship from Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns during their match. But to have him to the outside completely forgotten about, you knew he was going to play into the finish. I just didn't think the finish would come in the form of him just basically coming straight out of nowhere, leaping off the top rope, scampering up the ladder, grabbing the belt, and falling off. While everybody sort of stood around looking dumbfounded, most especially Finn Balor, who was about a rung or two away from grabbing the belt and becoming the new IC champion. It just felt really weird. It felt like maybe the timing of the match was a little bit off, and Seth had to rush what he was doing in order to make the finish work. But yeah, the ladder match ended on a bit of a strange note, but overall the match was enjoyable. Probably my favorite match of the night. Our next match of the night pitted WWE Champion AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura in a rematch from the Dream match at WrestleMania 34. Now, this match is definitely a very, very close second for me in terms of match of the night. What made this match fall just a little bit short is, even though they gave it an ending that I actually approve of, I like the double, basically the no contest, where there's no real winner, no real loser of the match. It's basically a draw. Now, there's 3 ways that you can do the draw. One they never use anymore, which is the time limit draw, which, man, I really wish that would make a comeback from time to time. That would be great. The second type that you can do is what they did here, which was a double countout. And then you have the one which I think would have been the most appropriate here, would have been the double disqualification, especially considering how there's, the low blows, the sneak attacks, and all of that. I think a double disqualification would have been the most appropriate way to end this match to keep the feud going, and also have it lead into something like a no disqualification match, or have it pushed forward to something like an Extreme Rules pay-per-view where they would fight in like, I don't know, a cage, a Hell in a Cell, or what have you. That being said, I think this match had a great mix of athleticism and just sort of physicality, fast-paced action, slow, more cerebral, ring psychology. It was a good match. It was put together very, very well. I do like the fact that there wasn't a definitive winner or loser, or even like a disqualification type of scenario where one guy comes out on top with a cheap victory. I like the fact that they had it as a draw. I just wish that they had gone the extra step, made it a double disqualification, because it would have looked really, really good to help really escalate their feud to the next level. Our penultimate singles match of the night pitted The Undertaker versus Rusev. Anybody who thought Rusev had a chance of winning this match, you might want to not answer any telemarketing calls or click on any random links and emails that you get from people offering you money. Because yeah, that would be foolish of you. I don't know if this match was meant to symbolically bury Rusev Day as a concept, especially with the way that the match ended with both Rusev and Aiden English being stuffed into the casket. But what I will say is I do like the fact that they allowed Rusev to be very competitive in this match. I like the fact that they didn't turn it into a 2-minute squash like they had at WrestleMania. The Undertaker looked quite a bit better here. He didn't look quite as sad and as immobile as he did at WrestleMania 34, so I'm guessing some of the rust has worked off. He's probably done some more workouts to limber up and get himself in a little bit better ring shape. Obviously, this was done to play to the crowd. You know, The Undertaker is a huge draw no matter where he goes. Rusev came out not looking too terrible. I'm just hoping that this isn't, management's way of saying, okay, we get it, you got over, we rode your merchandise train for a while, but go away, we have other plans, and we have absolutely no intention of putting you in the main event anytime soon. We get to our piss break match of the night. It's a steel cage match for the Universal Championship, Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar. Again, just like at WrestleMania, it's one of those matches I can't get invested in. As much as they've tried to put Roman Reigns over as the sympathetic, hard done by kind of guy, the kind of Joe worker that's there for the people and there to be there every day, don't care. Brock Lesnar, I don't mind him as a part-time champion, but he needs to make more appearances at the very least. Like, I'm thinking back in the days of, like, when Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior were world champions. They didn't defend their titles all the time, but at least you could see them from time to time. You saw them more often. So we need to strike a little bit of a better balance. I will say that I do kind of like what they tried to do with the ending of the match. The end of the match, of course, was the spear through the cage with Brock Lesnar hitting the floor and Roman Reigns sort of falling on top of him and then rolling off. And then the declaration that Brock Lesnar hit the ground first, so he wins the match by escaping the cage, and so he retains the title. I like what they were trying to do. What I hated was probably one of the bigger botches of the night as far as I'm concerned, because they kept showing the replay where you could see the zip ties breaking of where that piece of cage was going to rip off. It totally ruins it when you can see. It's like a bad magician where you can see how they're doing the trick because they're not hiding anything. It's just sort of right there in plain sight. It was almost comical with how bad it looked. Thinking back to it, especially the replays, when they would replay the slow motion clip to say, like, who hit first, and you have that piece of bright white zip tie that's just rapidly flying in toward the camera and just getting bigger and bigger and more prominent toward the right side of the screen. It was very distracting. A for effort. The intention was good. The execution, unfortunately, didn't go their way, and I think all of those replays, especially the camera angle that they had, really didn't do them a whole lot of favors. The other thing that doesn't really do them a whole lot of favors is that it gives them an excuse to extend this feud even further. This feud is tired. This feud is old. I don't care about the controversy. I want it to end. You know what? I think back of the tweet that Ryan Jansen made at WrestleMania with Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. I'm like, just give Roman Reigns the title. Give me 30 minutes of just play a continuous loop of 30 minutes of footage of Brock Lesnar beating Roman Reigns with a chair, and give Roman Reigns the title. Just get this over with. Either either figure out if you want Brock Lesnar to beat CM Punk's title reign record, or you just want to do the coronation of Roman Reigns and get it over with so you can maybe turn him heel and try and make him interesting. But this is really starting to get a whole lot of boring very, very quickly. This, of course, brings us to the main event of the night, the 50-man Royal Rumble match, the greatest of Royal Rumbles, as it were. Overall, this match was okay. I don't think this match would have been nearly as memorable without Titus O'Neil, who is no doubt the number one trending individual on Twitter right now. They replayed his intro maybe about 20 times just to watch him slip and fall. And they said they could never top the Shockmaster for biggest botched entrance of all time. And Titus O'Neil said, hold my beer. I got to run out to the ring, and he beat it. Ultimately, the biggest disappointment with this match was, where were the NXT call-ups? And yes, I do understand there were quite a few of the NXT guys in the Rumble, I'm talking about the NXT call-ups. Like, where were the guys in Sanity or from Sanity? Where was Andrade Cien Almas? These are guys that should have. This would have been a great place to debut these guys. Get them in the Rumble. Get them already causing trouble, causing chaos, starting things that when they debut on regular television, they're hitting the ground running rather than you have to do the whole thing like they did with the Iconics on SmackDown, where you have to kind of, hey, look at who we are, sort of thing, and get them going. You could have had them in the match, starting something right away, kick off a feud, or kick off some potential beef that could kickstart a feud once they hit TV. The match ends with Braun Strowman eliminating Big Cass, who just moments earlier had eliminated Daniel Bryan, who entered in at number 1 to set a new Royal Rumble Iron Man record. Braun Strowman is awarded the gigantic Royal Rumble trophy, as well as a symbolic championship belt. Hopefully the crowd was really into it. I'm wondering if they're going to have him carry that greatest Royal Rumble championship belt around like a title. Would be interesting to see what they would do, especially since you're going to get a crowd reaction of him holding a belt up over his head. And we'll see if this leads to anything. It's not really like he needs that, like, more of a push, so to speak. He needs his pushes to kind of culminate in something rather than, comedy tag team matches with a 10-year-old, or, multiple failed attempts at cashing in on the world championship at pay-per-views. So that's my recap of the greatest Royal Rumble. If you felt differently than I did, leave your opinions in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. Yeah, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything that you don't feel comfortable leaving in the comments below, or you just want to reach out and say hi to Lee or myself, you can reach us at onyourmarkswrestling@gmail.com. We'll see you Monday for the Raw recap. Take it easy.